I think the biggest part with that is I'm closing my, I'm muting myself each time. So
Okay, so maybe that's just what we do is we just juggle back and forth. All right, so we'll just start over. So this session's really about engaging role play, how you can, as a GM, work to set up a space to encourage players to role play in your game. Also, as a player, how can you role play when you don't really know how to play the role, right? So I think we're going to start with the GM side of things. So as a GM, I think we really want to create this safe space, right? You've got these players who maybe have watched some of the streams and they see these people doing character voices and doing all this amazing stuff that looks like everybody on the stream has a degree in theater. And so you feel a little intimidated by that. And I think that that's what we have to do as GMs is make that safe space so that people at our table know that, hey, this is not a performance. This is just a game. We're all having fun. If you want to try a character voice, try a character voice. If you don't, that's okay. It's not a competition. It's just a game to have fun with. On the flip side of that, however, I think you need to model as a GM, be the RP that you want to see in your game, right? You model that stuff. If you want people to be engaged in role play, you don't just pick up a module and kind of dryly read the book and then ask them what they want to do, because then it kind of gets to that really low level of gaming where you're presenting them with a problem, they're going to solve it, and there's not much role play going on. So I'm going to pause there. That way James can chime in as we figure these things out.
yeah, so that's kind of something that, and it's interesting because the way I play is two different ways. So on Sundays we play with the stream, so there is going to be a portion of bringing a little more enthusiasm, acting, because you're trying to entertain as well as play the game. But for my normal tables, it really depends on the vibe of the group. Some groups are going to want to be extremely involved, extremely heavy role play. They don't want to feel like they're ever outside of the world. And then other groups are going to be a little more slapstick happy, is okay with some outside play. And it's really just feeling that out. But the best thing to do is to always try to pull a little bit each time. If that's nothing more than a crazy character sound like this, or or you break down into somebody's really old that's like this, and they're horrible acting. In all honesty, I'm not an actor. I'm not professional in any way, shape, or form. But it brings that change of mindset to players. And I think that is where I see 90% of my players get more excited, even if the accents are just absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you brought up something else there where it's a little bit of it is just getting your players excited by doing something kind of unexpected or something that they have to think about, right? So it doesn't matter as a GM, it doesn't matter if your voices are great or if you're a voice actor or whatever. It's just about throwing out those little unexpected things that make them go, oh, now I'm listening. And then they want to engage with it, right? Yeah, I think that's a good, goes back to that thing, right? You want to model what you want them to feel comfortable doing in that safe space that you've created at your table. You got anything else? I've got some reward thoughts as well if we want to move into that, but go ahead.
Yeah, so the other thing I would say is if you're trying to get your players involved, you're trying to get your players to immerse themselves in the world, make the world immersive. Don't just, you have a shop, you have a bank, you have an inn. No, describe it. What size of inn is it? What kind of feel are you getting when you're walking into a place? Is there music playing? Is it a run down, beaten up dwarven tavern that 90% of the people that walk in are miners out of the the warm rest mountains, and they're covered in soot, and they're all grumbling, and 90% of what they do is drink? Or is it a very high class, clean, elegant establishment where you can get the 5-star mentality, and there's a bathhouse built into it, and it brings that sense of change compared to just, oh, there's a tavern, oh, you walk in, you talk to the bartender. You have, if you're going to expect your players to immerse themselves, you have to give them something to immerse in.
Yeah, yeah. I like how you described, describing things. Use all five senses, right? You use everything. Yeah. How's it smell? How's it look? How's it feel? What, all of those things. Um, and that kind of goes into that, modeling that immersive environment that you want them to become a part of. Uh, the next piece that I'm going to throw out there is about rewarding characterization, rewarding them role playing, right? And there's two different ways I think of rewards, and that's your extrinsic rewards and your intrinsic rewards. Your extrinsic rewards are those outside things, stuff they get, right? Which could be, getting inspiration, or getting loot, or all of those things that your character gets. That is kind of it's not, I mean, it's still fantasy, right? So it's not tangible stuff. They're not walking away from the table with something cool, but they get that stuff slash extrinsic motivation. That's the easy route, right? The next thing is that intrinsic, that internal motivation, that you reward players for characterization by giving them a part of the story, giving them ownership of a part of the story that's just theirs, because that then they want to, oh, hey, I made a connection with this NPC. I made this connection nobody else in the party has. I can go to that NPC and use them later, or ask them things, and those story or intrinsic motivators can help kind of build that ongoing role play desire in your players.
Yeah, so you brought up two really interesting points. I'm not big personally on extrinsic the external rewards. I personally think that there are ways to initially get somebody to pull in, as if you are going over and beyond on a role play action. You're describing a magical ability that you're casting upon a creature, or you're describing a kill, and it's just blows people away in the whole group. But the intrinsic, now that is something I love to do. Weave that backstory, weave those character traits and thoughts into the story, so that when they see that pop up, they know they're now part of it, and they're not just diving into somebody else's story.
Yeah, yeah, and one way that I do that in some of the short form, like one shots and whatnot, is actually before I even start giving some RP quest, like basically just note cards with a little quest. A matter of fact, when my friend, another friend, James, who I'm working on with the Savage History, the feudal Japan module for Savage Worlds, that's something we're writing right into the module. These little quests that you hand to the players that says, "Hey, when you first meet Takeda Shingen, um, here's a quest that you can role play out that matches that pre-gen character." And that, it doesn't have to be pre-gen characters. It could be any character. And you just, like, before you go into that night's session, you have some note cards, or if you're doing it virtually, send them an email and say, "By the way, when this happens today, here's a role play quest that you can pursue. Something that your character can do. I will reward you for it." And it allows the players to take part of that story and tell it for you, instead of you always having to tell that next thing. And by dividing that out, it really kind of getting little note card RP quests to help you as the GM tell that story and help your players feel a part of the story.
No, that's a perfect example. My my way of doing it normally is with secrets or with lore quips that I can give players in between sessions. And not only does that make it more interesting for the player to feel like they're in the world, but it also keeps your players active throughout the week. Because we all know the one thing that kills a game faster than anything is a schedule. And when the people start realizing that they're going to miss out on something, specifically something with their character that they've invested time and energy and emotion, and especially if you've had a character who you've gotten a player to cry over, you've got them. Like, I hate to say that, but
Your players cry.
I've had people cry. I've had dice thrown at me. Um, I've had people jump up like literally out of the table. I've had laughing out of your chair. Like those moments when you hook somebody with that type of emotional connection, it's no longer just a part of the story. They've invested their being into the game, and at that point, you've pretty much hooked them.
So those are my few notes, at least, on kind of the GM side of encouraging role play. In getting ready for this stream, I did come up with, or I did some research, found some other videos. I'll shoot those over to you, James. Also, when I post this on YouTube, I'll post those in my YouTube link as well. But yeah, there were some good things in there. Dungeon Dudes was one of the videos that I'm going to link. And yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts that I use for trying to engage, setting the safe space basically, and encouraging that. Do you have anything to start us off with, the player side? How to help players get into role play when they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't play this role.
Oh, mine starts before we play. My main focus is and everybody's it's kind of become more of a normality now, but it wasn't something that you would think of. Character creation should be more than just character creation. It should be what the character is developing to be at a very early age or an early time in their creation. And what that'll allow you to do then is you can insert those backstories. You can get that information out early so that when you are thinking through the story and you're like, hey, so and so said they had a rival. Oh, well, we're heading into a town where there's a pit fight. Oh, who can we pop in here? Well, we'll pop his rival in here so that it allows them to see more of the world. And those types of things is what I use before we even start playing a game. And those are normally the things I will read over. And some of my players know this, some of them don't. I read backstories almost weekly to play on players, just enough to get into the mindset of all the players that even if I don't have anything written yet, there's a good possibility that during the stream something will kick off in my crazy bald head of mine right here. The Magic 8 Ball will kick in and I'll say, oh, there, now that I can pull that into that character. So
yeah, I start before the game as well, especially with some of the weekend retreats. For example, I made a ton of videos and lore content for the GUI Cube World Xyathe. And as before they even started chapter 1 during that weekend retreat, I would shoot them lore videos and character intro videos for the pre-gens. So I kind of do a little bit of digital storytelling up front to get, kind of like you said, engage them in the in-between side, so that they come to the table hungry for telling stuff, telling their part of that story. I yeah, I like the idea of kind of having those, and this is something that I would say that D&D doesn't do well, which is they don't really do kind of those merits and flaws and backstory stuff baked into the game. You kind of have to do that on your own. And I think that that's something that if you do well, doesn't matter what system you're using, you get that backstory written. You have those kind of flaws, those backgrounds, those rivals, those things you can kick the can down the road so that people can pick it back up later.
Yeah, so I'm not before we go any farther. I'm not going to take this as my idea. Just like him, I use many resources. The resource I'm getting out of with the secrets and lore is specifically out of Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy DM. Now I know there are some people out there that cannot stand a lazy game master, but there is a technique to use so that preparation is being prepped for things that are important and things that aren't. And a lot of times game masters get into that hit where you're prepping so much. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have time to prep thousands and thousands of hours worth of time to prep for a game. So when I prep for things that are going to be important to the players, important to the world, and important to the story. And as long as I hit at least two of these three, I can make it through a session with no problem, and it's still going to be interactive and it's still going to be fun. That, like I said, and I've been really reading on stuff like that. There's another couple other really good GMs out there. Dungeon Coach has a lot of just tips and tricks to be a good game master. But a lot of his are also story. He has a neat trick, actually. So he starts some of his players at level 0. Now, 0 is interesting, so you pretty much half all your stats, and you're now playing as a commoner. And then you're through the story and through your background, you can then kind of build on your backstory a bit more, and you're playing through your backstory a bit more, rather than you just having a backstory. And I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, I think that, and that's like a prolonged session 0, right? Where you start as this commoner and you build up and you make your backstory as you go. Another way I've seen that happen is instead of it being a session with everybody, it's basically a session 0 to build your character and then design the little vignettes that you want to do with that character. And then get everybody together and everybody does their 2 or 3 vignettes and you just do them chronologically. Okay, this one happened first. Oh, and yours happened next, but it was like 3 years later, and then yours happened. And you kind of build up this very quick group backstory through doing little snippet vignettes that you actually role play out a little bit. You don't spend too long on them, 5, 10, 15 minutes on a vignette. But that's your session 0, is you're actually doing all the vignettes to get all the characters to where they end and they join and they meet each other and they go on to do whatever the big thing is, right? That's been so getting into the player side of things, we kind of regress back to the DM side and our tips and tricks. So getting into the player side, I think that if you're brand new at this as a player and you want to kind of, it's really thinking about it as this is a collaborative game. All role play games are collaborative games, and the best thing you can do to start out being a good role player is really look at some of the other characters and figure out how you can help them. See what other people are doing at the table and see how your character, and you can even use the stats as a framework. Okay, how can my stats help them out? What are they trying to do? Okay, I'm going to use my stealth stat and I'm going to sneak around and try and help them figure something out. And that will start that it'll help your brain get to the point where you're being your own character, but it'll also help build that because you're also seeing what other people are doing and trying to help them out. I guess that would be my step 1, right? Help other people, and then it'll come together from there. James?
That's great. The only thing I want to kind of connect with that is something you mentioned right at the beginning, and I was hoping you were going to go a little bit more into it because it's something that the wizard says. So it's something Alphinius always says is make sure that everybody knows, group them together early in the game. Make sure they all have a group mission, a something that brings them all together very early in the game, and that way you're not having to do the, well, tavern talk. It's just what we are. So, but that to me, and it took me a while to learn that. And sometimes I would have a good idea of how the players, or the players themselves, would come up with a good idea of how they were working together. But the idea of having that start that way, and the Darkest Dream does a wonder for that. It's the same. That's the same model we did when we started our stream. Was the model of the Hanataz and the Carnival, and being a part of a family already. And not only does that bring your players together, but it brings your players having a connection to a lot of your early NPCs, which then, when NPCs have problems or NPCs have good things happen to them, it's more excitement for the group rather than just the NPC.
Yeah, I think that's building on that. Yeah, having if you as a player don't have that experience, right? You as the player, you sit down at a table. Let's take the worst case scenario for a new player. They down at a table full of strangers who have been playing a campaign for 3 or 4 years, and they're the new person at the table. There's all this history, all this background, and you're sitting there going, I don't even know this world. I don't even know what a Hanataz is. How do I play this game and feel like I can participate? And kind of going back to that supporting other characters piece, I just encourage you to jump in, figure out the vocabulary things, right, and then just go with it. And also, you're a brand new player, so know the difference between you and your character. Like, don't take personal offense when one of the other characters ribs your character for, doing something dumb. Well, maybe your character is just dumb, and that's okay, right? And just realize that this is one of those things that you just jump in. It's just a game. It's not like there's a competition here. And if you need something, and I've seen this in tons of other videos about being a new role player, coming up with a couple of little catchphrases for your character that kind of solidifies that character in your own mind to help you get there. You don't have to have fancy, character voice or anything, but in that worst case scenario, I think it's more important that you kind of tag on to what other people are doing.
I've personally been that person when I first joined D&D. So we were talking off stream a little bit, and when I joined, I was 14 years old in high school. The next oldest person was 19, and our GM was 55 years old at that time. We were playing with 16 players in a college campus, and I'm brand new at D&D. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I'm just sitting back, very quiet, watching these people play, and most of these guys are in their late 20s, early 30s, and they've been playing with this group for, I don't know, 3-4 years. The guy's got a world the size of our world with all this lore, and what some people have never seen is how those game masters actually bring their world with them. It's not a laptop. Not when I was playing at first. It was index cards, massive notebooks, all these random things that are put into this giant box and carried around like a suitcase. But yeah, as a player, you have to be willing to, especially if you're a dominant player, if you're a dominant personality player, you kind of have to take that moment to step back a minute and be like, okay, I'm still the new person. It's not just that I'm a player, but I'm the new guy. So I've got to kind of learn the ropes of the game. But once you do that, and most players I've seen in tabletop specifically are usually very open to help new players. There are those few that are just jerks.
Yeah, it is kind of understanding the table that you sit down at too. I see a lot of I I think that as I go to conventions and I sit down at tables with different groups of players of different styles, it really comes home to me that there really are uh, some, for the most part, most role players want to dig in and they want to help tell the story. They don't want the story to be just about their character. You may run into a couple who want to be, they want to be the action hero of the whole adventure, and they want the whole adventure to be about their character. I would say that's few and far between. And I've been to a lot of conventions, had a lot of people at my table, and I've probably run into three or four players like that. And either I was playing with them or I was running a game where they sat down at my table. Uh, and so, for the most part, I think that you're going to find that other people are going to help you as well. Um, let's see what other notes did I have as I was preparing for this. Okay, so another thing for the players, if you're brand new at this, or even if you just want to get better at playing your character, um, really hone in on three things: what the character wants, how they want to get it, and who stands in their way or what stands in their way. If you can solve those three things for your character, you have all this stuff to play with, right? What does your character want to do? How do they think they can get it, and what stands in their way? If you know those three things, it just opens up a lot of opportunities for role play.
No, that's like right on the dot in my opinion. What your character wants should be not only something that you should know, your game master should know, because that's their job to then the what stands in your way. That one I could say kind of you can sway against, but at least what you want and how you want to get it, you definitely want to have those things understood in your head, because you never know what the game master is going to throw at you, because you might think that that's what's in the way and it's something completely different. My players can tell me that all the time. So, but the other thing is, and this comes down to more of a psychological thought process, but how much are you willing to do to get what you want? Because that can be a big change in the manner of, I want to be power. I want power. Okay, you want power. I know that if I go to this place and get this weapon, I have power. Yes, you do. What is the cost that that weapon could do to you? You have to now understand, is it worth it? And that, I think, is the big one that most people kind of forget about, is not only what you want, but how far are you willing to go? Because the dark side is very close in many, many occasions.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that especially in uh, some of the systems that kind of, for example, I'll use Delta Green as a system that is not really about character development. It's about character degradation. It's like your character keeps kind of devolving. It doesn't get. It might be more powerful, but kind of like Call of Cthulhu. Like it goes, people, your character at some point is unplayable because of all of this crap that has happened to them. Um, not that everybody likes those types of games, but I think that an element of that in every game where am I willing to risk my sanity for this? I don't know.
So that brings up an interesting point, and I'm not going to go very far into it. It's definitely another conversation for another day. But how far is it until you're to the point where what you've already got is enough? And that is where most people stop campaigns. What my personal opinion is about every 5 to 6 levels, you need to ask your players if they've achieved what they wanted to achieve, and if they haven't, do they still want to go for it? Because personally, when you're level 15 and you've killed major things, and the dragon's over there, but you've made your money and you've done your thing, are you gonna really risk your life again? Or not? And those are the questions you have to ask as a player. But yeah, we can go. That'd be a different story for another topic.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and I think it's also one of those things that keep in mind as a player, like James was saying, um, is your if your character changes. So let's say you know what you want, you know how you want to go about getting it, and you know what stands in your way, but things change, the story changes, and then you find yourself with this character that you're going, I don't know if they still want that thing, or if they want to go after it. It's okay to say, I want to start a new character. It's the most of the investment of a character. I would say with a really good GM, it's still 60-40, 60% player, 40% GM investing in your character. But for the most part, in most games, it's mostly you investing in that character. And if you're ready to kind of move on and do something new, your GM is going to be okay with that. And as long as you don't come to the table with a new character every session, then I think that you'd be okay. Kind of, and I've done that. Matter of fact, I might be that player that my DM Michael, who I play with, he's been running Forgotten Realms for a while, and I think I've had 3 characters in the campaign. Not one every session, but it's got to the point where it's like, okay, well, I don't think this guy fits anymore. Can I play something different? And he's always been accommodating. So I think it's acceptable to do that. So
That's an interesting thought, because I personally will push my players to keep a character. Partially because I've seen the other uglier side of that, which is, I played the character mechanically and he's gotten boring now. Now I want to play this beefy character that's a different class and race. But if the story makes sense and your character has changed, because if I can still ask you, hey, what do you want? And you're willing to still go grab it, but you want to get it with a different character, I'm going to kind of question you a little bit. But if it's, okay, you did it, or, you guys are on the other side of the world and it's not going to happen anytime soon, but, and you guys are heading in a completely separate direction of what's going to go on, then you have to ask yourself one other question, and that is, would your character stick around with the party? Because a lot of times, everybody gets a character arc. They get to go after what they want, but you have to decide which character gets that at a time. Because otherwise, you're just driving randomly in 6 different directions, and it's going to be much more difficult to do so.
So, Pam, you got a question there. How have the character changes been explained? Did the original die? Are you talking about my examples or just in general? Delay. Yeah, my examples. So, in my examples with the 3 characters in the campaign that I've been playing for a little bit in Forgotten Realms, really, no. Okay, yes, the character did die, but because I told the DM, hey, I don't think this character fits anymore. And actually, how it came about is there was a more powerful NPC that was kind of guiding the party to do stuff, and the way my character was doing things was causing problems with the rest of the party. That and I just asked the DM, do you think that NPC would allow this to happen? I see that what we did last session caused a lot of problems, and it's really where my character wants to go. Do you think that powerful NPC would allow that to happen? And he goes, no, probably not. And I said, and I see that my character's drives and my character's goals are going separate from the party. Let's just switch me to a new character and let that character go. And he was like, okay. And he used that character as an example from the high level NPC. And I got to play a new character. I got to go in a route that the party was actually beneficial to the party. And that character concept that I had, he did die, but it was kind of like with my permission, right? The DM didn't just say, "Oh, I'm going to kill you for no reason." So that and the funny part about that is all of the rest of the characters are still the same characters, and they mourn the loss of that guy, and it's pretty cool story wise. So
Yeah, so with stuff like that, it's interesting because really that shows really two amazing things. One, it shows that you as a player are willing to connect with something that makes more sense to the party. I think when you do something like that as a player, that is more beneficial than to the story than it is not. Because if you're always driving one direction and six people are driving the other direction, you're never getting anywhere because you're always fighting this guy left and right. Um, and I will say with that is normally why I tell my players that we don't play evil, unless everybody's playing evil or neutral, because I don't see the point or the ability for you to play a evil character and 60% of you are good. Like there's gonna be some huge conflicts going on at this point. But yeah, definitely better to have a planned death than a bad roll.
although the die rolls are part of the game, right? And I think that that's one of those pieces as a new player, because we're still talking about kind of like how do you play a character, it being able to suffer those bad rolls and those bad turns of fate in a way that kind of enriches your character, enhances your character. Or hey, if your character dies because of bad rolls, hopefully the DM lets you make it epic somehow, and it's not just uh, a bunch of failed death saves in the corner where nobody knew you were there, right? Um, so yeah, I think that's. I also don't. I've been GMing a long time, and in campaigns, I'll do a DM hand wave every once in a while, just so that the story can continue and the character arc can finish, and not let several bad rolls ruin it. Yeah. Okay. So that's part of making your next character. Everybody, this is Pam's recommendation here, so I'm going to just throw it out there. In making your next character, go ahead and write your Shakespearean death soliloquy, so that when the bad rolls are there and your character dies, you can pull that out that you made from character generation and just read through that 3-4 paragraph death soliloquy. I love that. Uh, Funny stuff. So James left me, so I've again taken over Tabletop's Misfits stream. I have all my notes covered. I guess from the chat, which there's only two other people other than James and I. So any questions about engaging players or engaging your tips and tricks in engaging in role play? And for anybody watching who also watches their Sunday game, I fully intend on giving the GM disadvantage with all of my points on their stream on Sunday, because that he just did such a poor job getting this technical stuff together. So I had to give him disadvantage like every 10 minutes. So it should be a pretty easy game next time for the group on Sunday. All right, so I'm just going to make some stuff up until he comes back. Oh, there he is. All right. I was just going to make some stuff up there. Are you back and can hear?
Yeah, I'm good. I had a goblin attack, so I had to go run and take care of the little goblin.
No problem. So I've covered all my notes. Do you have any things to add about just kind of encouraging role play and ways to do that?
I guess my best advice for a new player or for a player in general would be to make something that's not super out of your normal as a first character, because you want to be able to understand and kind of get in the head of a character and something that makes sense to you. A lot of times you see the polar opposite. So you see the guy who just literally picks, I'm a bookworm, so I'm going to be a wizard. I'm a jock, so I'm going to. And these are horrible stereotypes. Please do not judge me on these. But, and then you see the opposite. So then you see the guy that's a construction worker or something, and he's got, he's gruff and all this stuff, and he goes out and he plays a sorcerer. And he puts it at high wisdom, high intelligence, and to some people it works, but it might be pushing your boundaries a little bit more than you're expecting to be used to. And when you're trying to get in that role, it's easier if you don't have that extra boundary over it. I think those are what I would suggest for a new player, is to at least pick something that makes sense to you and that you can understand very quickly. And then also read your stats, because that's annoying to everybody.
So I'm going to add on to that. I don't disagree, because I think you're right, having something closer to yourself. But I would say on the other side of that coin is pick at least one thing about this character that is not you. You don't want to be, play somebody totally different than you first time out the gate, because it might be too hard. But try and pick something about that person that you're playing that hey, that's not me, so that you can. It might help kind of break out of the role play shell a little bit. And I would suggest, especially if we're talking D&D, play a simpler class to play, so that you're not buried in your character sheet, or you're not looking up 50 different spells that your wizard might or might not be able to cast. Play one of those simpler class. Play a fighter, play a rogue, play something that you can really have a handful of things that stat-wise that you can do, and really focus on the role play and enjoying the game, instead of trying to figure out the rules for 40 pages worth of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. And last but not least, remember that you can limit players too. Not to be mean to them, but tell players if they're brand new, hey, you're only getting the player's handbook this time, man. Like, you got to learn you got to understand the basics first before you jump into 8 different books that you can pick from. Because especially if you're on stuff like D&D Beyond, and your game master has unlocked everything, that's a lot of stuff to go through, and it can be extremely exhausting and overwhelming to a lot of players. So, Corey, do you have any last minute things?
No, I think we're good, man. I think this has been a good conversation. I think that we need to, those watch this either now or watching it later on the stream, try and ping us and give us some ideas for our next few weeks, things that you might want us to talk about, either from the player perspective or from a DM perspective.
Yeah, so with that, thanks for coming to our tavern and hanging out with us for about 45 minutes to an hour. About 45, because sadly 15 minutes of audio was pretty bad. That will be fixed hopefully soon. But my brain doesn't always work every week, so sometimes it will still break. Until then, next week we will be back here to hang out again, so come see us next Thursday, and come check out our stream on Sunday, where we continue our story. And also make sure that you head over to Chrysalis Endeavors to go check out their Twitch stream, because they have an awesome new Twitch stream coming out too. All new fun stuff. So until then, clink your glasses together, and we will see you next week.